And now we come to the last part of this session, turning science into policy. This was originally supposed to be given by Simopolous. He was not able to be here today, but I would like to quote her from the conference program. Simopolous has been one of the foremost pioneers of the scientific research about the role of the omega-3 fatty acid in health and disease. For many years, he has advocated for public health policy changes based on the research. Dr. Harry Rice is going to give his presentation, and I would also like to stress there are more information about all the speakers in the program. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Artemis wanted me to send her regrets. I spoke with her Sunday. She had twisted her ankle and she was unable to be here. There are some similarities and some differences between myself and Artemis, and just very quickly, I'd say that we're both very opinionated. If you've had the privilege of seeing Artemis present, you know that she's very opinionated. I am not as animated as Artemis, and unfortunately I can't change that, so we'll have to do it with me. So I'm going to start about 30 years ago at a conference that was held in 1985, and this was a conference, and pardon me, I need to get situated here. Sorry. So at the conference, there were many people that you may recognize and may have heard of, pioneers in the omega-3 field. I just want to point out Bill Lands was here, and since I'm playing Artemis, I'm here. The conference objectives were several-fold. One, to review the research data on the health effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids in seafood in terms of the impact of omega-3 fatty acids on eicosanoid formation, thrombosis and inflammation, and the role of docosahexaenoic acid, in membrane function and metabolism. Second, to develop a research agenda to determine the spectrum of the health effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids of seafood origin in the American diet. So this conference, as I said, was almost 30 years ago. There were 5 different sessions. Topics consisted of the impact of omega-3 fatty acids on eicosanoid formation, thrombosis and atherosclerosis, lipoproteins and atherosclerosis, immunology and inflammation, and DHA, membrane function and metabolism. Recommendations that came out. Concern was expressed regarding the low amount of omega-3s as supplemented oil in prepared infant formulas, but a number of the participants commented that soybean oil was probably providing an adequate amount. A generally accepted recommendation was to divide the daily calories ingested as fat among omega-3 and omega-6, monoine, and saturated fatty acids. The support of research on the role of omega-3 fatty acids in growth and development and in health and disease and the mechanisms involved. And the establishment of a test materials program to specifically define the nutritional requirements throughout the life cycle, dose, and type of omega-3 fatty acids in intervention studies and in clinical trials. In December 1985, the U.S. National Institutes of Health and U.S. Alcohol, Drug Abuse, and Mental Health Administration developed the first program announcement on biological mechanisms of omega-3 fatty acids in health and disease states. Additional program announcements followed that provided the impetus and the funding for support of research in the field. A major factor in the expansion of this research was the establishment of the Test Materials Laboratory within the U.S. Department of Commerce, Division of Fisheries. The Biomedical Test Materials Program has been designed to produce a long-term, consistent supply of quality-assured, quality-controlled test materials to researchers in order to facilitate the evaluation of the role that omega-3 fatty acids play in health and disease. And here you can see in a period from December 6, 1985 to April 17, 1987, our requests for applications and program announcements. Let you look at those a little bit later. The BTM program was established in December 1986 through the cooperation of the National Institutes of Health, the Alcohol, Drug, and Abuse, and Mental Health Administration, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Department of Commerce. The Fish Oil Test Materials Program is administered by the Division of Nutrition Research Coordination in the Office of Disease Prevention at NIH. So a little bit more about the fish oil test materials program. The need for test materials to specifically define the functions of the various omega-3 fatty acids was clearly enunciated by all the session chairmen. In response to this recommendation, the National Marine Fisheries Service of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration initiated a test materials program to be carried out within its own laboratories. The program produced under documented quality control the types and quantities of omega-3 test materials required by biomedical researchers, packaged in a manner appropriate to their research needs. The forms of test materials to be produced included refined fish oil, polyunsaturated fatty acid, enhanced triglycerides, concentrates of esters of fatty acids, purified omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3 mono, di, and triglyceride mixtures. The joint program announcement by NIH and ADA-MHA, the 8 NIH institutes participating in the joint program announcement published in the December 6th issue of the NIH Guide for Grants and Contracts include the National Institute of Arthritis, Diabetes, and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, the National Institute of Neurological and Communicative Disorders and Stroke, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. Boy, there's a lot here. I am not going to continue reading these. I apologize. The 2 institutes of ADA-MHA participating in the program announcement are the National Institutes on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism and the National Institute of Mental Health. Sources of omega-3 fatty acids. The amount of omega-3s in fish is dependent upon salinity, temperature, and season, as well as on how the fish is harvested, processed, and cooked. Conferences both prior to and subsequent to the conferences on the health effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids in seafood have elucidated several goals. 1, to measure levels of omega-3 fatty acids in phytoplankton and to develop methods for their extraction and preparation. 2, to look into the possibility of growing phytoplankton in pods from which it may be easily harvested, thus providing a ready source of omega-3 fatty acids. 3, to feed lower-grade fish oils to fish in aquaculture. And 4, to consider the possibility of synthesizing omega-3 fatty acids. Move on to a conference that was held 5 years later in 1990. It's the Second International Conference of the Health Effects of Omega-3 Polyunsaturated Fatty Acids in Seafoods. It consisted of numerous panels, sorry, I moved and I didn't move the slide. It consisted of numerous panels listed from here, panel A to panel J, beginning with growth and development in infants, moving on to cancer. You'll notice that panel C is advances in mechanisms of omega-3 fatty acids. Out of this conference was the establishment of ISFAL. I'm going to continue reading Artemis' slide here. These past 5 years of expanded research have not only enhanced our knowledge about omega-3 fatty acids, but also about omega-6, omega-9, and saturated fatty acids. To deal with this expanded research area, it was decided to form an international society for the study of fatty acids and lipids. This society, as I mentioned, came out of this conference in March of 1990. The conference brought together the pioneers in the field of omega-3 fatty acid research, including Drs. Hans Olaf Bang, Ralph Holman, Hugh Sinclair, and Maurice Stansby. They made presentations on the evening of March 22nd at the conference banquet. Their presentations are in response to the question posed to them, which was, what is the most memorable event in your life relative to omega-3 fatty acids? The proceedings begin with their presentations. Without any doubt, these 4 giants kept the interest in omega-3 fatty acids research from being swept away by the storm that overtook Western societies with the omega-6 fatty acids and the cholesterol phobia. The events, as recounted by Drs. Bang, Holman, and Stansby, make it clear that the search for truth is in one way hard and in another easy, for it is evident that no one can master it fully nor miss it wholly, but each adds a little to our knowledge of nature, and from all the facts assembled there arises a certain grandeur. This, of course, is a quotation from Aristotle. It is this search for truth that distinguishes science from other endeavors. Moving on to factors to consider in protocol development and clinical investigations. A number of randomized double-blind controlled studies have been carried out in disease states. Inconsistencies in the results of some of these disease states, the studies from those disease states, appear to be due to variations in the design and duration of the studies. Selection of proper controls, failure to determine omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acid status, along with the status of other dietary factors. For example, vitamin E, and also failure to consider the genetic variations of multifactorial diseases, and consequently the need to study subgroups for the various hypercholesterolemias, as well as hypertension and diabetes, whether diabetes type 1 or type 2, and arthritis, and failure to control for the amount of exercise and for body mass index. In many studies involving animals, differences in animal species were not taken into consideration in the design of the study. For example, the rate of oxidation of omega-3 fatty acids in the spontaneous hypertensive rat is faster than in the normotensive Wistar-Kyoto rat. As a result, less of omega-3 fatty acids is found in the tissue of the SHR rat. In understanding studies, it is therefore essential to know the initial phospholipid content of cells and to know about related factors that pertain to the disease under study. Also, genetic variants must always be considered in the designing experimental protocols. Patients and controls must always be matched for age and sex, since there is evidence that women respond to omega-3 fatty acids differently than men. To illustrate, the same dose of omega-3 fatty acids lowers thromboxane 2 more in women than in men. Many of these inconsistent findings on the effects of omega-3 fatty acids on LDL cholesterol in human subjects appear to be associated with inadequate dietary control of saturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids during the control and intervention period, as well as differences in lifelong dietary intake of fatty acids, differences in disease state, differences in types of hyperlipidemia, and differences in the types of diabetes studied, amount of fish oil used, and the length of time administered. Furthermore, it is essential to measure tissue levels of various metabolites and other factors influenced by omega-3 fatty acids, since plasma levels change faster after cessation of treatment than tissue levels. This next, I love this next slide here. It shows the growth in the publications, and this is from 1984 to 1989. Oh, sorry, that was not good. There we go. So we have 1984 and 1989, and we're up here to about 300. And if you move to modern day, 2014, I believe we're at we're over 24,000 publications at this point in time. So this is great. The future of fatty acids in human nutrition, health, and policy implications. This session was originally proposed by Dr. Michael Crawford, who's in the audience today, and was to be co-chaired by Dr. Crawford and Dr. Simopolous. Unfortunately, Dr. Crawford was unable to participate, but Dr. Simopolous, in Dr. Crawford's absence, read a statement from him. The International Society for the Study of Fatty Acids and Lipids must take a leadership role in raising the political, scientific awareness on fatty acids for the following reasons. 1, the failure of the 15th International Congress of Nutrition to be held in Australia on September 26 to October 1st, 1993, to take on board fatty acid issues. 2, the failure of the Food and Agricultural Organization, the United Nations, to include issues on fatty acids in their agenda. FAO and the World Health Organization held an expert consultation meeting on fats and oils and human nutrition in Rome in 1993, specifically devoted to fatty acids. 3, evidence that fatty acids are not being considered seriously in the political arenas where they matter most, and often far more than the issue they repeatedly debate. And 4, priorities for research funding are outdated by 2 decades of new knowledge on fatty acids. Great things can be achieved when the best possible science, sound strategies, adequate investment, and political will are combined. And here, presenting adequate intakes for adults, showing you the DHA should be at least 0.22 grams for a 2,000 kilocalorie diet, and EPA to be at least 0.22 grams as well, so the 220 milligrams for both DHA and EPA. My recollection from reading through recommendations over the years is that this came out of a 1999 workshop on omega-6 and omega-3, Joe is up here nodding his head, so good, I am right. Glad to know I'm giving the right information. And then finally, adequate intakes for infant formula. Here, just to point out, 350 milligram, oh, pardon me, this is percent of fatty acids, 0.35 for DHA, and for EPA, says EPA is a natural constituent of breast milk, but in amounts more than 0.1% in infant formula may antagonize arachidonic acid and interfere with infant growth. And I'll just point out today that across the board for infant formula, EPA content is always kept below DHA content. And right here, or up on this slide right now, these are different proceedings from workshops that Dr. Simopolous has been involved with over the years. So quite a few. I thank you for your attention.